Today we're going to investigate the state of Destiny free-to-play in order to answer two questions. Number one, I want to know if it's worth it as a new player, and number two, I want to know what the game is actually like from a brand new player's perspective. In order to do this, I've brought along my friend Soup, someone who has never played Destiny in his life. We're going to hop on brand new free-to-play accounts, and I'm just going to observe without interfering. This will let us see the game through the eyes of an actual brand new player. The Destiny new player experience is heavily criticized, and a lot of people claim that it's just horrible, overwhelming, and confusing. But the thing is, my friend Soup doesn't know any of that, so I'm curious to see if he reaches the same conclusions by the end of this experiment. He might end up like this guy who quit the game after 2 hours, or he might have a positive experience. I really don't know. The other factor is that the new player experience was significantly updated within the past year, so we will also be reviewing those updates and seeing if they actually make a big difference for Soup as a new player. We logged into the game on our brand new accounts, and we were not off to a good start. Destiny bombarded us with about 500 pop-up notifications, and already, literal seconds after launching the game, Soup was already feeling overwhelmed.
Okay, that was a lot that hit me right at the start. I have had about 10 pop-ups so far, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I haven't even gotten to the main menu yet.
There were so many random things, and unfortunately, every single one was irrelevant for new players. We made it to the character creation screen, we created our guardians, but then we were both a little confused by what happened next.
I got an achievement, long and winding road. Wait, reach level 20. I got level 20. It's that easy.
Character levels haven't been a thing in this game for like 5 years, so I'm pretty surprised that this achievement hasn't been removed or updated in all of that time. We moved on from this pretty fast though, and Soup started to admire the pretty cutscene and awesome music.
That's pretty hype. That's a pretty hype cutscene.
If you're a veteran player, I'm sure you remember this other cutscene, but as of now, it is actually no longer in the game. However, removing this cutscene is probably a good thing because they replaced it with something far better. There was a new 5-minute cinematic that showed us the entire Destiny story and covered basically all of the major events in the Light and Darkness saga. Funny enough, it was actually created a couple years ago and it was just put on YouTube. Literally, all of the comments were just screaming, "Please put this in the game for new players to know what's going on." Suffice it to say, I was pretty glad to see it finally added to the game. Soup told me it was good storytelling, but understandably, he didn't retain all of the information that was thrown his way, and this made it difficult to comprehend some of the stories that we encountered in the future. When the gameplay started, Soup instantly opened up his settings to change some of the ridiculous defaults that were turned on. For him, the sensitivity was like 3 times too high on PC, motion blur was turned on, and somehow his HDR was also toggled on, which made the recording look absolutely awful. As we moved forward for the first time, the game gave us some excellent pointers on how to move, jump, and sprint. There were a few more explanations about how to pick up and use the Kvostov, how to use a melee, and how to throw a grenade. Everything in this section was really intuitive and well designed, and it seemed like Soup had no issues figuring out what to do. Without knowing anything about the classes, Soup decided to be a Titan. It seems he picked the right class because just a few minutes into his first gameplay session, he was already showing some of the defining tendencies of a Titan main.
I do kind of want to melee one of these guys, see what it's like. Let's see if I can get close to him. Oh, it's one shot. Can I even get closer to all these guys? Oh, I died. Or no, I didn't, whatever that was.
That part at the end was fascinating for me as a veteran player. He thought that he died because of the Titan's special melee ability taking him into third person. The game did actually explain the difference between a melee ability and a normal melee, but the notification only appeared for less than 1 second right in the middle of combat. Nobody is going to be able to read that entire sentence within 1 second and also fight off enemies, so I think it's very understandable that he didn't see it. He remained quite confused about the melee for a while, but eventually he discovered that the melee ability is different from the normal melee. When we moved on to the next room, Soup got his first taste of Destiny space magic as he cast his first super.
Use my ability, F to supercharge. Oh! Oh, I'm going. I'm going, baby. This is fun as hell right here.
I think a lot of veteran players forget how special these moments are for new players. Using your first ever super is that initial taste of Destiny space magic that really sets this game apart from other FPSs. Unfortunately though, the game never told him to use his super heavy attack, and so he proceeded to only light attack enemies one by one for the entire duration of this video. We finally got a notification explaining that the HUD in the bottom left will keep track of your abilities, but it wasn't particularly clear. Since it didn't tell us what each icon in the HUD was actually tracking, Soup wasn't quite clear on this, and he also didn't know which part of the HUD was tracking his super regeneration. The message also made reference to class abilities, and this is absurd considering that the game hadn't introduced class abilities yet. Using terminology like this doesn't accomplish anything except for confusing the new player. At this point, the game introduced the character screen and gave us a little tour of our subclasses. This was another new change that didn't exist before, and I suppose it's a nice way to ease new players into the menu system. The subclass was highlighted to tell us where to go, but it was hilarious how badly aligned the marker was. It was not even close to being centered. At this point, Soup made the mind-blowing discovery that he actually had more than one weapon.
Oh, we have a shotgun secondary. Oh, I just saw that. Huge.
He acquired this shotgun like 10 minutes ago, but he didn't notice because the game only showed the text on screen for a couple seconds. This very first mission required us to play solo, but after we finished it, I joined up on Soup's fire team. We immediately discovered that the voice chat is turned on by default, and it sounded absolutely horrendous. I just realized the fire team chat is on by default, like the voice chat. Aside from the sound quality, I'm not sure how I feel about the voice chat being turned on by default. The majority of new players probably don't know that their mic is open and other people can hear them, and this could definitely lead to some bad situations. This part of the mission used to give a really clunky, high-impact hand cannon, but now it gives a powerful SMG and tells the player how to equip it. This was a nice improvement, and Soup immediately opened up his inventory and put it on. As we moved throughout the mission, something that was consistently unclear for Soup was the direction you're supposed to go. The little diamond waypoint was often small and in the distance, and sometimes it even blended into the environment. At one point, we were just kind of going in circles since he didn't know where to go. I didn't give him many tips throughout our gameplay, but in this case, I decided to step in and give him a bit of a pointer.
I cannot find this gray triangle. I'm gonna be 100% real.
Yeah, there is a way you're supposed to go. If you look at the very top left of your screen on your radar, there's a little arrow pointing you in the right direction.
Oh, probably should have known that.
I think it should honestly be explained because like at the end of the day, like you have a lot of experience playing games. Imagine if you had never played a game before, you know, like
yeah.
I feel like the beginning of a game should be welcoming to all types of players, whether they're super experienced or not experienced. And you didn't even, know where to go. So I feel like a brand new player, they might get stuck for 3 hours here, right? Like,
yeah. And I swear there was a gray triangle at one point. It just disappeared.
It didn't help that sometimes the waypoints disappeared and the game never told us to pull out our ghosts to make them reappear. If you're a veteran player, it's probably hard to imagine, but it seems that the navigation is just rather unintuitive when you're new. I found a random video of this other guy trying the game for the first time, and he was also not sure where to go.
I have to say, navigating the UI and figuring out where the game wants me to go is quite confusing.
Before we go any further, I need to be perfectly clear, this video is not trying to be harsh or disrespectful with its criticism, but rather, this video is meant to share the feedback that comes from actual people who are new to this game. I love Destiny 2, and I truly do believe it's an amazing game made by amazing people, but of course it has some imperfections and issues, and we will be mentioning some of those in this video. Destiny also becomes a lot better after this onboarding experience, so if you're a new player yourself, please keep that in mind. An interesting change I noticed was there are now tons of pikes in this first major mission on the Cosmodrome. At this point, you haven't unlocked your personal Sparrow vehicle yet, so this was a nice addition to help new players get through the first mission faster and have a bit of fun. Soup really liked driving it around and firing it at enemies, but unfortunately it didn't give us any guidance on how to drive. He didn't realize that there was a boost to go faster, and it took him a while to figure out how to get off the pike. This seems to be a very common issue, as I also found this random video of a guy who got stuck on his pike for like 3 years, and the only way he found out how to hop off was by painstakingly opening up his keybinds menu and searching for the keybind. Before Soup managed to get off his pike though, the game decided that this was the good time to tell him to use his heavy weapon, which of course added another level of confusion. You obviously cannot swap to your heavy weapon while riding a pike, and even after jumping off the pike, we found that our heavy weapons had 0 ammo anyway. When you play with a new light, there tend to be a bunch of funny moments because they learn things that you totally forgot people had to learn. For example, after about 30 minutes of gameplay, the following is Soup's reaction to discovering how to slide.
Oh, I can slide!
Wow, yeah, that's a crazy discovery. You can slide.
But sliding's awesome. Let's go.
The game actually never told you how to slide, did it? I also thought this was a pretty funny moment.
New objective. Destroy crystals. Is this crystal just in a rock?
No?
Oh, it's above. I thought it was on the ground. I was looking on the ground. I didn't even see it up there. That's so funny.
At the end of the mission, the game taught us how to fast travel for the first time. At first, Soup was trying to select a random public event that also appeared on the map, but after a few seconds, he was able to successfully fast travel back to the Cosmodrome. However, if he were to simply close his menu, the instructions telling him what to do would have disappeared and he would have been completely lost. Also, there is an extremely common bug where this fast travel notification simply never appears at all. This is definitely a massive problem for the people who run into it. I had this guy come into my Discord and tell me that he was stuck in a prison, and it turns out he was right on this exact fast travel step. He didn't get a notification at all. He just couldn't figure out what to do, and he was stuck running around in this tiny room, but luckily I was able to help him out and tell him how to escape. If you would also like Destiny help, feel free to join the Discord. It's discord.gg/shadowdestiny. When we talked to Shahan, I noticed another subtle improvement that Bungie has made within the past year. There is now this blue text right here when you're talking to a vendor, and it tells you exactly what to do. In the past, this text simply didn't exist, so this is a nice touch that could help new players navigate the user interface a little bit easier. Next up, the game introduced us to the Quest tab and demonstrated how to track a quest. This was good, and this year the interface is now a bit easier to understand. It now has a featured quest section that shows the main quests the game wants you to focus on, making them more obvious for new players. However, the fact that it can sometimes feature like 4 quests at once absolutely defeats the purpose of it existing at all. As we exited the menu, there was a random chest sitting in the wild, and here's what happened when we went over to loot it. Do you know what you got from that chest?
I don't know. I thought somebody else grabbed it before me.
So yeah, it gave you a bit of currency. It just popped up really small on the top right of your screen. By looting that chest, you just got like 500 glimmer.
Oh wow!
But yeah, it didn't really tell you what it was. So
yeah, and I guess I'm just learning here. You can use it to craft. Use a fuel, and you can use it to craft. Okay.
First of all, this is a terrible description of what glimmer actually is. Used for craft and as a fuel? Like, what on earth does that mean? It should just say, this is your main currency, you will use it for everything. I also noticed that there is now a resources tab in the collections menu. This is actually a useful section that explains what all of the currencies and resources are used for, but unfortunately the game never told us to look here. Given how important the various materials and currencies are, I think the game should really introduce these new players to some of them at least at some point along their journey. The next quest was problematic for new players because it didn't actually tell us what to do. When Soup pulled out his ghost, it just said to complete the Guardian Rises quest, but it didn't actually say what that quest entailed. The only way to find out was to open the quest tab, which new players are not very familiar with yet at this point. Even then, the quest says to defeat Fallen, and I'd be willing to bet most new players do not know what a Fallen is. To be fair, can you really expect a new player to remember some offhand mention of a Fallen that came in a really dense cinematic like half an hour ago? Soup had a rather interesting observation about how a random public event was actually explained better than the absolutely essential New Light quest.
Okay, so this thing on the left here, it's so funny. Oh my god, it's actually hilarious. So they actually have extractors defeated 3 out of 4 for the event, but not that the quest we're doing. That's so funny.
Upon returning to Shahan, we were presented with our first ever legendary weapons and a screen with a little information about rarity. I was hoping that this might explain all of the differences between the rarities, like blue, greens, legendaries, and exotics. Interestingly though, it didn't actually explain rarity at all, but instead it just kind of implied that legendaries are significantly better than everything else, and it didn't even mention exotics. Not a big deal at this point because new players don't have exotics yet anyway, but this still felt misleading. Even though we had encountered a bit of confusion in the gameplay, I was curious what Soup liked about the game so far.
Like I said, you've already said this before and I've already said this, but I love the sound design and the weapon sounds. It's very satisfying to shoot and stuff, which I think is important for a game like this. All my shots are hitting that I think should be hitting. I'm missing some shots too, right? But it's all very snappy, and kind of what I was expecting it would be, since, like I said, I've heard very little about the game, but I know the gunplay was pretty highly touted as being pretty good, so.
Next up was the Cold Boot quest, and luckily we were able to complete it without the game completely breaking. This mission is extremely prone to just randomly glitching out because if you simply run slightly too fast, the game will totally break and make it impossible for you to progress this quest. At one point, I thought that this was fixed, but no, there's still recent posts showing people getting permanently stuck in this mission. I don't have any concrete data other than these YouTube videos that have a lot of views, but I can confidently say that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of players have gotten stuck on this quest. Like, imagine you're a brand new player who just picked up the game, and within 1 hour, you're stuck in a game-breaking bug that does not let you progress the main quest of the game. It's safe to say this does not leave you with a good first impression of Destiny. Unfortunately, this exact problem has probably made tons of people just quit the game straight away. This bug has been in the game since Beyond Light in 2020. It's just insane that it still hasn't been fixed. Considering that every new player has to go through this quest, I cannot fathom how this was not priority number 1 at Bungie. A catastrophic bug in the literal third quest of the game does not get patched for over 4 years and counting. Again, I would like to reiterate here, the takeaway from this video should not be that Destiny is bad. The new player experience has some really unfortunate issues like this, but this is just one part of the game, even though it is an extremely important part. Right in the middle of an encounter with the Hive, some text appeared telling us that finishers can be used to instantly defeat low health enemies. Because Soup was distracted shooting at the enemies and the text disappeared after 4 seconds, Soup did not really understand it. And therefore, he spent the next 87 hours of gameplay not using his finisher a single time. Finishers are some of the most important and powerful moves because you can just instantly defeat big enemies as soon as they get somewhat low on health. Unfortunately though, Soup is probably just learning that right now by watching this video. At this point, I was starting to notice a trend. The game likes to explain stuff right in the middle of battle and only show it on screen for like 2 seconds and then never tell you about it again. We've seen quite a few examples of this already, and this was one of Soup's major gripes with the New Light tutorial. You just can't expect new players to read something within 2 seconds in the middle of combat and then remember that information till the end of time. After we got to the next mission, I realized that the whole entire ammo system was also not explained. Soup was running around and picking up ammo bricks and orbs of power because he thought they were actual loot that he could use. At one point, he got super confused because he wanted to loot some heavy ammo, but it wouldn't let him because all of his heavy ammo was full. At the end of the day, there are just so many systems that are either not explained or poorly explained, and I think this is what collectively leads to most new players saying they feel confused or overwhelmed. This is a massive issue because when people get confused, they sometimes decide that it's just time to call it quits. Quote, "I tried the game, thought it looked good, but got so confused that I decided to uninstall it after 2 hours." We acquired our personal Sparrow vehicles, but of course, the game told us nothing about them. Soup had no idea that he had acquired one or how to summon it, so we just set off walking on foot across the entire Cosmodrome to reach our next quest. I got tired of wasting so much time though, so eventually I caved and told him about the existence of his Sparrow. He summoned it and still had no idea that you could boost in order to go faster, and he was not alone in this. One guy in my comments said, "I needed about 5 hours of playtime until I discovered that the Sparrow has a boost." When we got our first piece of legendary armor though, it was actually the opposite of confusing. The game gave us a perfect little tutorial on how to open up the menu and equip the armor, which was honestly refreshing and very straightforward. We then had to travel again on our sparrows for quite a while because our next objective was very far away. Imagine running this entire distance.
No, I was just thinking that. I'm really just thinking if people don't know about the vehicle, they'd be running so much.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I think there's probably like a 1% chance you would have just happened to stumble across your vehicle. You know?
I agree.
Like if I had never mentioned it, you know, the only reason I mentioned it is just because it saves us so much time, which, you know.
I'm happy you mentioned it. I definitely would have run the entire time.
I made a video somewhat similar to this one last year, and something I pointed out was that I kept getting notifications for artifact unlocks. I said that it was probably confusing for new players to get a pop-up about an artifact when they don't even know what an artifact is yet. Well, this year I was happy to notice that this was changed, and now it seems like these notifications don't even exist at all. This is not something that most people would really notice, but again, it's a combination of these little things that ultimately make a big difference. Something else I noticed is the game now gives you far better weapons early on in your journey. It used to take several hours of gameplay to get your hands on some good weapons and armor, but now you just randomly get rewarded with more legendaries along the way. This is an excellent change. In the past, I feel like many players probably quit before ever getting to try some of the more interesting Destiny weapons, but now they'll get to experience some of the fun stuff a bit sooner. Speaking of which, Shahan was actually offering this key which instantly unlocked the tractor cannon exotic for free. I think this is also an awesome way to let new players get their hands on an exciting piece of loot really early on. Unfortunately though, the game never told Soup to pick it up, so he didn't. In an effort to make this video as realistic as possible, I decided to wait and see if maybe he would discover it later on. As I opened the director for the first time, I noticed that nearly every destination was grayed out. I'm actually a big fan of this because it helps new players feel not so overwhelmed by stuff that isn't relevant to them yet. The tower was literally impossible to miss, and it was really easy for Soup to just select it and proceed onward with our quest. The game did a great job of introducing Zavala in dialogue, so before we even arrived at the tower, we knew he was an important character. We actually hear a lot about him before meeting him, but unfortunately the other character descriptions are far less insightful. For example, we were told that the Drifter is, quote, unique, and that's literally it. There was zero character building for all of the other NPCs, so unfortunately there isn't exactly a reason for new players to care about them at all. When we landed in the tower, things were looking kind of strange. It was an oddly empty place, with nobody there except for a few characters and the Traveler. The first person we met with was Amanda, and she introduced us to the tower and told us to go visit with the other characters like Zavala. We talked to Ikora and unlocked some new abilities for our subclasses, but then the game didn't really tell us how to equip or use said abilities, so I had to step in and explain how to use the subclass menu. This is an absolutely massive blunder. Abilities are very important, and they are some of the most fun and satisfying things in the entire game, so it's incredibly sad that the game doesn't even tell you how to equip them. It also doesn't tell you what the abilities do, why they are powerful, or how they work. Because of this, I bet a huge percentage of new players just run around with their default unupgraded abilities and then wonder why they are so weak and boring. We did our first ever strike, and it seemed that Soup knew exactly what to do, and he had a good time.
That was a pretty fun fight. Like, I swear a lot of the times that your first few fights are things that don't take that long, but I mean, that was a good, 7-8 minutes of just nonstop action. I enjoyed that.
We were then launched into a cutscene explaining that the Traveler went to orbit, and we got hit with this present-day text. Last year, I got stuck on an endless loading screen at this point, but it seems that they must have fixed it because this year we got spawned into the tower after just a mildly long 60-second black screen. As soon as we appeared in the tower though, we noticed a lot had changed. The presence of the Cabal and Elixni in the tower was very surprising for Soup because we literally just spent the last 2 hours annihilating them, and now they are just casually hanging out in the tower with us like nothing ever happened. I had the very difficult job of explaining that in the past we forged an alliance with some but not all parts of some of our enemies. Also, that content is no longer in the game, so you will never find out why or how. Amanda, who we literally just met 3 minutes ago, was now of course dead and replaced with a memorial. Like, how is a new player supposed to interpret this development? This whole sequence was just so incredibly disorienting. A few minutes ago, the tower was pretty empty, but now it's full of our enemies who are now our friends, and one of the characters we met is now just dead somehow. Destiny's narrative is very complicated to begin with, but I imagine that this whole experience is just utterly baffling for new lights who have zero context. A random player came over to us, teabagged, and then decided to welcome us with his campfire emote.
He was instant teabagging. It's like he knows what's going on.
Yep.
He watches your videos, guaranteed.
He probably is a little suspicious of my name. When we talked with Zavala, his entire vendor interface just popped up with no context. As a new player, all of this stuff is irrelevant anyway, so I feel like it should either be explained or just hidden from view.
Okay, so this picture, this on my screen right now, there's like a lot going on. Like that menu, so there was that menu, this bottom thing, it's blocking off like his name and stuff. There's definitely a lot going on, but if you take your time with it, you figure it out.
We got a new pop-up for Guardian ranks, and this was actually very important. In the past, the game told you nothing about Guardian ranks, so this screen was a good way to introduce what a Guardian rank actually is. Unfortunately though, it didn't say that Guardian ranks is the main objective you should be pursuing, and Soup really wasn't clear on this. He knew that Guardian ranks existed, but it wasn't clear that this is the system that is like the ultimate checklist that takes you from being a noob to a pro. Sadly, it did nothing to alleviate the feeling of being lost and not knowing what to do. As we ranked up to Guardian rank 2, this guy came over to celebrate, which was awesome. We then all just jumped off the edge of the tower, and I found it fascinating how fast Soup was picking up on all of the random traditions that we have in this game. This is his first ever visit to a populated tower, and he's already jumping off the edge and celebrating his Guardian rank up with random people. After this point though, this is where the game started to get really overwhelming. We just got thrown into the deep end, but we're level 2 and we don't know how to crawl, much less swim. When we went over to speak to Ikora, we got slammed with a ton of quests. Just like that, we now had 6 quests in the quest tab, and Soup wasn't really sure which one he was supposed to do. The feature quest section was supposed to fix this exact issue, but it still recommends like 3 or 4 quests at a time, so it's not clear which one is best for the player to actually do. The Guardian rank objectives were not highlighted at all, unfortunately, even though I'd argue that should be the #1 primary focus for new players. When looking at my comment section and social media and stuff, I've seen that this quest overload situation is a big problem for a lot of new lights. They have a ton of quests, they don't know why any of them matter, and they're not really sure which one is best to do first. In frustration, this post was titled, "How do people actually know what to do?" I think it would be a whole lot better if the Guardian rank system was front and center, giving players a clear path of progression in this game. Unfortunately, it seems that right now, the whole entire Guardian rank system is just easy to miss for new players. Quote, "I have never looked at my Guardian rank. I didn't even know I had one." Soup at least remembered that Guardian ranks existed, but he wasn't sure what they were or how to continue it. Something that we needed to discuss was the monetization of this game. This is always a contentious topic in the Destiny community, so I was very curious to hear Soup's outside perspective as a new player who was seeing these prices for the first time. Hit like see all and then yeah, give me your thoughts.
Expensive for sure. Wow. $30, $60. Yeah, to be honest with you, I just saw this total. Wait, $564. My God, for all the DLCs.
That $500 price tag is a bit misleading because there are a bunch of bundles and cosmetics that are inflating the total price, but the fact that it says $500 is still super problematic for the exact reason that you just saw. A new player took one glance at that price tag and was instantly turned off because he thought that's what you had to pay for all of the DLCs.
I would be much more inclined, like if they just had like a starter DLC to maybe ease a new player into the game, like a $5 to like a $9.99 DLC where it's like, hey, you know, the game can continue here. This is our cheapest DLC, and hopefully it's a well-received DLC or something like that. But yeah, the fact that it's definitely expensive to continue playing. Off-putting, for sure. Off-putting. I mean, it's a free-to-play game. I understand. Oh, interesting. Has mixed reviews on that. Okay. Mostly negative. Mostly negative. Oh, no. Okay. Witch Queen is mostly positive. 7,600 mostly. I did not realize how much people were pissed off at these. Bad, just bad. Microtransactions, the game is boring. I did not realize how much people despised a lot of this stuff. At least this guy had fun.
Overall, the store page is an absolute mess. The theme of new players being confused within the game also continues in the store, as there is no indication of which DLC is good for new players. There are 14 individual things for sale, the total price is prohibitively expensive, and the reviews on all the bundles are pretty bad because people don't like paying for stuff like the Forsaken pack when the Forsaken campaign was literally removed from the game. From the player's perspective, I can say that we absolutely need a more user-friendly onboarding experience for the monetization of this game. You cannot simply give a new player 14 different options and expect them to figure it out on their own. Even though I've played this game for 10 years, I still had to study the store page for like 10 minutes to find out what a new player would actually need to buy. On the bright side, there are sometimes exceptional sales that will give the new player all of the DLCs for as little as like $20. That type of deal is amazing and straightforward, but unfortunately these deals do not exist for like 90% of the calendar year. So if you just happen to get into the game when there isn't a sale, you're just out of luck. If you're a new player, you probably don't even know that these sales exist, and even then, you probably don't want to wait several months just to get into the game. This guy presented an interesting perspective, saying they should revamp the new player experience again and come out with a bundle that includes everything. They've already made their money on the old stuff, it would be easier to recommend the game with a single purchase option, make it easier for new players, and build some goodwill with the community. Getting back to the gameplay, we noticed that the director was now much more populated. Many of the planets and destinations were now unlocked, further contributing to the feeling of not knowing what to do next. The menus in general were a bit of a struggle, and since this game has like 42 different tabs, it's pretty confusing to navigate as a beginner. The timeline section was highlighted though, and this gave Soup an excellent introduction to some of the stories that he missed out on over the past 10 years. He didn't really read through the whole timeline, but he did launch us into a highlighted mission called Cade's Fate. These timeline missions are a relatively new feature where players can relive important moments from Destiny's past. This mission was essentially an abridged version of the Forsaken campaign where Cade meets his demise. Like I said, the Forsaken campaign was removed from the game, so this mission is a good way for new players to see a bit of the history that they'll never be able to fully experience. As we loaded in, Ikora gave us an excellent overview. She explained Cade's role as the Hunter Vanguard, showed us some iconic Cade moments, and generally explained who he was. Soup thought he was awesome, and I'm glad that he got to experience a bit of Cade's history, since the vast majority of all of his missions no longer exist in the game.
Press the red button. They're all red! Then press all of them.
Although the mission did give us a few sentences about Cade, it never explicitly mentioned that he was a Guardian, and therefore Soup thought he actually died when he crashed to the bottom of the prison. Because the game never explained it, we also spent about 14 centuries in this room wondering why the boss was immune before Soup discovered that you actually had to shoot this little lantern thing. When we got to the end of the mission, of course Cade actually did die, and it still hit hard even though we knew it was coming, and Soup just learned who Cade was like at the start of this quest. Ikora wrapped up the mission with some more voiceover about the events following Cade's death, and also told us a bit about Uldren and Crow. This was good because previously Crow just made zero sense to new players who didn't understand his backstory. Still though, a few sentences cannot possibly convey the detail that was in all of those hours of cut content. We returned to orbit and faced the same issue as before where Soup wasn't really sure what to do next. He randomly decided to launch up the Lightfall campaign because he remembered it was recommended to him like 20 minutes ago. But again, I think it would be nice if there was a clear path forward that was presented by the game. As soon as we loaded in, we were greeted by a lovely notification telling us to open up our character screen and equip mods. But this notification is extremely problematic for one very obvious reason. It's telling us to equip mods, but we don't have access to mods yet. We are Guardian rank 2, and the mods aren't even unlocked until Guardian rank 5. You inspect your armor, go to the mod section, and there's just literally nothing there. This notification really annoys me because it just makes new players feel lost since they can't possibly do what the game is saying. This whole experience was confusing enough without it asking you to do things that are impossible. As we moved forward in the mission, there was this helpful notification about shooting the vents, and I thought this was pretty good because this is the first destructible item we had encountered, and most things in this game are not destructible. Soup blasted it open, and a few minutes later we got a good explanation about the so-called tech packs that provide shields to enemies. Soup certainly did not know the function of these before they were explained, so I'm glad that they were mentioned here. We encountered our first tormentor in that room where he just picks you up and then runs away, and this was Soup's immediate reaction to this.
That hurt, so don't get close to him.
I thought it was super cool that he instantly understood that mechanic, and this was a pretty smart way of introducing the enemy and giving new players a sense of what they're capable of. This is also a great example of the game teaching something by showing it instead of telling, and I always like when they find a way to do this. After placing about 10 banners in our gameplay so far, the game finally told us what they actually do. Not sure why it waited so long to do this, because it certainly would have been nice to know a long time ago. We encountered our first real tormentor, and since these are pretty powerful enemies, I was curious to see if Soup would be able to defeat it. It took a few minutes, but Soup was able to successfully take it out without any help from me. However, I know that this is not the case for a lot of new players. The Lightfall campaign is infinitely more difficult than the New Light quest, so a lot of people are simply unable to beat it. It can even be difficult for experienced players. On my video from last year, this guy said, "I'm really glad you mentioned how the Tormentor could be a stop for someone. It soft-locked me for 2 hours, and I had previously played D2 for almost 200 hours a few years ago." We proceeded to go through the Strand tutorial, which we thought was actually pretty awesome for new players. Getting to use Strand with a super fast cooldown on everything is really fun, and it makes the new player feel much more powerful than when they're wielding their crappy blue weapons and armor. I actually think stuff like this is an important experience for new players to have, because if it didn't exist, they might just think that abilities are always weak and have super long cooldowns. When all your stats are like tier 2 and you don't have any subclass upgrades, your abilities all feel very useless. After we finished the quest, it dropped us off on Neomuna and gave us this message telling us how to summon a sparrow. This was actually wild. We unlocked sparrows like 4 hours ago, and it's just now telling us about them for the first time. We've used our sparrows in tons of quests up to this point, and it was never explained until now. This simply makes zero sense. It should have given us this information as soon as we acquired our sparrows way back in the Cosmodrome. Soup decided that this was a good time to explore around Neomuna and admire some of the architecture. Just exploring around?
Yeah, just looking around. I just can't get over these environments, dude. They're just so well made.
Yeah, it's a really cool area.
Like, just very, very well done.
Soup wasn't really sure what to do since the game didn't give us any instruction. He said he was looking for something to follow, but nothing ever appeared. Eventually, I told him we should start another quest. He probably would have figured this out by himself, but it still felt weird that the game didn't give us any direction on what to do next. He decided to do another timeline mission, this time on Europa, and I realized that all of this story must just seem so disconnected and incoherent for him. We've been to Neomuna, we've done Forsaken, and we did some random quests for Shah Han, and now we're on Europa, but we don't really know why. One of my YouTube comments had a similar perspective, saying, "I've also been sent all over the universe for no apparent reason." Another said it felt like he was skipping all of the story, and he wondered if he somehow bought a story skip by accident. Soup told me that he didn't really know anything about the storyline with the Light and Darkness, so I asked him if he thought it could have been explained in a way that was more friendly for new players.
I want to say the easiest way to explain something to somebody is just through like a timeline progression, right? So it's just from A to Z. So I feel like if you're kind of like hopping around between different storylines, maybe it gets a little bit confusing, but I really don't know. You just learn it over time from playing a bunch.
Yeah, that's true. And it's difficult because so many of those storylines were literally removed from the game.
Yeah.
So you can't go back and play them. Like you mentioned, it would be much more straightforward if it was A to Z, but instead the new player experience these days is like A, B, C, F, Z, K, Y. It's like it's all out of order. It's like some parts are missing. Like,
well, that's good to know because I felt a little bit bad not knowing what a lot of the stuff meant that they were saying. Feeling like I should know, but I don't have any reference really to why and how it's happening. I love the storylines, but they're not necessarily something where it's like I'm feeling 100% invested because there's a lot of terminology and words being thrown out that I don't necessarily know yet.
Yep, that's a big part of it, and also they're just so disjointed, Like, the story with us and Shah Han, it's like that has literally zero relation to anything that we're doing now. We wielded Stasis for the first time to wrap up this mission, and honestly, I was fairly impressed with the overall introduction of these new timeline missions. Ikora does a good job of explaining the events of the story and tying it all together, but ultimately the story is still not clear for new players. Like Soup said, there's just so many references to things he doesn't understand. The cinematics keep referencing characters he's never heard of and assuming that he knows certain things about the game. Upon returning to orbit, I realized that the director is now much more full, with almost every planet now being unlocked. I also realized how great it is that no destination or gameplay system is paywalled. Like in every other MMO I've ever played, certain areas are usually locked behind a paywall, so I was very happy to find that we could explore the whole solar system for free. Also, as far as free-to-play goes, Destiny actually has a sizable amount of free content. You get 3 raids, a dungeon, Dares of Eternity, all of the features and planets, and you also get to do the first mission of all of the DLCs. In addition, there's also the timeline reflections, so for certain campaigns like Witch Queen and Beyond Light, you get to play essentially 2 of the missions for free. I probably wouldn't recommend playing the game for years without ever buying anything, but at least the free stuff gives players a good taste of what the game is like before they have to spend a dime. Of course, we couldn't record this entire video in one day since it required a lot of time, so we returned a few days later for some more gameplay. Upon logging in, we got hit with this cinematic featuring a bunch of characters that Soup had never heard of before, and it also spoiled a ton of content he had never played before. This type of thing might make sense for veteran players returning to the game after a short break, but we think this is an absolute disaster for new players. It launched us into a new quest with 0 context, and Soup was unclear on why we weren't just continuing where we left off. We acquired an artifact, and although the game said to inspect it, we got 0 additional information about what the artifact actually is. It's clear that the game doesn't do a good enough job of explaining the artifact, and one of my YouTube comments even said, "Wait, what is an artifact? I've been playing D2 for around 8 months, and I have no clue what they are. Can someone please explain what they do?" This is a massive problem because the artifact is one of the most important things in this entire game, but as a new player, you just have no idea. Remember, at this point, we still don't even have access to mods, so we certainly have no idea what to think of these artifact mods. To make matters worse, look what happened to us when we returned to orbit. Okay, so welcome to the pop-ups. Watch what happens next.
Oh no. Okay. 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 I feel like Raid Shadow Legends right now. Wow. Okay, that was 5. Okay, it hasn't ended. Okay, we had 6.
6 pop-ups.
6 pop-ups. I didn't read. I quickly read them, but to be honest with you, for me, and I think you can understand this, I just want to get back to where I was. I feel like having those 6 things hit me right away. Definitely too much for sure. Maybe not for people who are playing again and who know what's going on, but yeah, for a new player, 100%. I feel like there's plenty of space on this screen that I'm looking at right now for just to have like a small inbox section like at the top left with notifications.
Yeah, exactly.
Very easy.
Say there's a little inbox and it just has a 6 next to it. You can go click on the inbox and read your messages if you want, just unread messages.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that, yeah.
Anyway, after that catastrophe, we decided to work on increasing our Guardian rank by completing some of the objectives like exploring the EDZ and Nessus. At this point, Soup was getting a hang of navigating the menus, which was good to see. He said menu fatigue was definitely an issue he was encountering, but over time he was slowly learning where to go. When we got to Earth, one of our objectives was to do public events, and of course we didn't make them heroic because the game never explained that to Soup. So an interesting bit of knowledge, we just completed a public event, and you can make public events heroic public events by doing like a hidden objective. And the heroic events give you more loot and rewards than just a normal event.
Heroic event. It's just like an upgraded normal event.
Yeah, so it's always like in your best interest to upgrade the events to heroic. But the thing is that the game never tells you like how to make any of the events heroic. So no new players actually know how to do it.
Yeah.
And then like the experienced players get pissed at the new players for not doing it.
Because they don't know how to do it. Yeah, I would not have known that was a thing.
He's certainly not the only one who doesn't know. One of my comments said, "Over 70 hours in, and I'm just now learning from this video that you can intentionally make events heroic. I had no idea, guess I'll look that up later." We finished up this objective, I explained how you're supposed to shoot these things to make the events heroic, and Soup had a pretty awesome time casting his second ever Thunder Crash super.
Awesome. Oh, that was sick.
Nice.
Seems like it's very satisfying to do that right when they spawn.
As we were running around and doing boring chores on the EDZ, it just occurred to me that this whole experience would be better if we could do some of the cooler content faster. It felt like the first few hours of gameplay so far involved mostly boring and repetitive activities like public events and patrols. I couldn't even count the insane number of 2014 style objectives that I had done, like defend the ghost while he scans something. Of course, I realize that the early quests need to be easy to understand, but I feel like the game could sprinkle in some more interesting objectives that are still easy and approachable. Some of Destiny's quests later on are super unique and fascinating, but so far as a new player, you might just think the entire game involves defending your ghost over and over. Soup realized that his inventory was getting rather full, so he was about to start just dismantling things. At this point, I realized that the game never mentioned power levels or infusion, and this just seems like a massive oversight. The infusion system is one of the most important things in this entire game because it allows you to upgrade your power of your favorite items so that you can continue using them. With your favorite weapon selected, you can go right here to upgrade its power by consuming another item. I had been mostly acting as an observer for the integrity of this experiment, but I had to tell Soup about infusion because he was about to just start deleting his best loot. Here's what he said in response.
That's really good to know, I feel.
It's such an important system.
Very good to know. And again, I would not have known that if it weren't for you telling me. I can't believe that's not explained at all. Like, what I would have done is been like, okay, I have 10 weapons, I need to get rid of some. I'm just going to dismantle from here. Like, if I wouldn't have known about the infuse. And then like, okay, I get like 100 glimmer or whatever it was. I would have never have gone in here, hovered over this, and then looked for something to diffuse here. Infuse here. I don't think I would have ever have done that.
It's just insane that new players are expected to figure out this kind of thing by themselves. The sad truth is that most new players probably don't learn about infusion for a really long time. Quote, a big one is power levels. No explanation, so I dismantled all my older gear for weeks. This other guy even told me that he dismantled an exotic because it was low power and the game never told him that infusion existed. Here's another glaring problem. There is no explanation of armor stats and tiers in that they only provide a boost every 10 levels. Armor stats make or break your character in this game, so it's crazy that they are never mentioned. All of this made me realize that Destiny could really benefit from a set of tutorials to teach people about things like armor, mods, and stats. Like, imagine a world where you could open up the Destiny settings menu at any time and then launch a tutorial that would walk you through the armor system in depth. It could teach you how to equip mods, how to make some basic mod synergy, how to masterwork things, and it could just educate you on everything you need to know about the armor system. There could be another tutorial that explains how to navigate the menus because they often feel overwhelming for new players. There could be another one that's just a refresher on basic gameplay. I just feel like Destiny really doesn't explain enough to its new players, and that is a huge reason why it struggles to retain them. We increased our Guardian rank again, and then noticed that one of our next objectives was to apply a shader to an armor piece. There was one small problem though. We didn't have any shaders, and we also didn't have enough bright dust to buy any shaders. So yeah, Soup just thought that this objective was completely impossible to do. I did, however, remember that hidden away on the third page of the archive section of the Eververse store tab, there was a hidden secret shader bundle that we would need. It's under the archive section.
Oh, Jesus.
Now go 2 pages to the right. And now you see that one at the bottom left?
Shader bundle?
And it costs 1,000 glimmer?
I can do it.
This is the only thing that costs glimmer. Yes, do it.
It's a little scavenger hunt.
I can't believe that this is a thing. Yeah, it literally does not tell you that this exists. I didn't know that it existed for a really long time.
Really?
I only randomly came across it.
That's so funny. It's on the third page too.
The third page of the archive with no markings. It's like, who's gonna just randomly go through the archive as a new player? I could not believe how unnecessarily complicated this was. Like, how are people supposed to find this? All of these shaders should just be unlocked by default for everyone, and it is absurd that a new player has to jump through all of these hoops just to get some basic shaders that came out 7 years ago. Even though the shader objective was pretty lame, I was actually a big fan of all of the other objectives in this level of the Guardian ranks. These objectives teach new players about a lot of core in-game systems, and Soup thought it was really satisfying to progress through this part. We got to engage with the gunsmith, buy some stuff from him, do a bounty for him, learn about enhancement cores, and also learn about a bunch of other systems in the game like how to apply a ghost mod. The objectives within Guardian ranks also provided a little description on how to do these things, which I thought was a nice touch. Our next objective was to purchase aspects from Ikora, so we headed over there and bought a bunch of awesome new abilities. In order to actually unlock all of these abilities though, you need to go meditate by this nearby spinny thing. But when we tried to meditate, it didn't actually unlock our abilities. The game completely bugged out and made the meditation simply not work at all. This was pretty disappointing considering that we just went broke spending all our glimmer on these abilities. We basically just got robbed by Ikora.
Oh wait, so I don't even have the aspects at all.
Yeah, even though you paid for them.
Wait, no, I paid for them.
Wait, go down to your fragments, those other slots, see if you have those. Yeah, you literally don't have those
I
either.
spent my hard-earned glimmer on those. Oh, this is ridiculous. This is unbelievable.
We headed into this next mission to unlock more abilities, and of course we noticed how unpolished it was. This is actually pretty stupid. It's telling me to throw grenades, but the type of grenade that I have equipped doesn't target these, like, destructible environments. It doesn't work on them, yeah.
No way.
So it's like, oh, toss your grenade, and it's doing no damage. It's literally not hitting them at all.
That would tilt me so much.
Thanks for the tip, Bungie. I'm tossing my grenade. Now what? I'm a new player. I don't know what's going on.
I swear you're telling me to do this.
I'm following the directions. We had to go around constantly kneeling like 50 times while looking at these really ugly and unfinished assets that break the laws of physics. There's these swinging lantern things with ropes that just go right through the ceiling, and there are all these ugly spinning pillars that just go right through the floor, ceiling, and walls like they aren't even there. Also, the fact that this whole entire mission just involves kneeling over and over while actively getting blasted by enemies just feels bad. The whole part where we got to use our super and abilities was nice, but it just felt like a far worse version of the original quest we used to have in D2 Vanilla. Despite the issues though, Soup said the mission was satisfying overall and it was good for him to get some practice in using his new abilities. When we went back to Shah Han, Soup discovered something that he had overlooked earlier.
Whoa. The key to Maeve's stash opens the chest she left inside Shah Han's camp.
I was wondering when you were going to notice this. So this key has been here the entire time. You just never noticed it.
Yeah, I did not. Yeah, I feel like Maeve's stash has been a thing since like the first hour of this game, hasn't it?
It has, yep. So that's, if you exit your menu and turn around, you can get an exotic weapon.
Oh, back here.
Yep.
Oh. Maeve's stash. Tractor cannon.
Like I said earlier, I'm so happy that the game now gives more exotics and legendaries to new players within their first few missions. It makes their gameplay more exciting in those crucial few hours when they are deciding if they like the game, and it makes them feel significantly more powerful in gameplay. In the past, you had to play forever just to get a few basic weapons, so this is a big improvement in my book. We went back to the tower, and for some reason it took over 4 minutes to load. It was like we were playing the game on the PS2. I'm not really sure why this happened because we both have fast internet and high-end PCs, but we just thought it was pretty weird. It did give us a nice opportunity to investigate the tips on the loading screen though, and we observed that some of them were about things that made no sense for new players. I think it would make a lot more sense to give different tips to different players based on how experienced they are. Like, wouldn't it be super cool if you could get basic tips when you're new, and then more advanced tips for people who've played this game for thousands of hours? When we landed in the tower, we were actually able to meditate and claim those fragments from the scammer Ikora Ray. I'm glad that we were finally able to get them, but this whole buggy debacle caused quite a bit of confusion for both of us over the last hour of gameplay. As soon as we resolved that bug though, we immediately encountered another. No matter what I did, I was unable to stop talking to Ikora, and I was unable to finish my quest. So if you jump while engaging with a vendor, you just get permanently stuck in the menu, and it's been like this for like 9 months.
No way.
Yeah, like imagine you're a new player and you get stuck in a glitch where you're eternally talking to Ikora. No matter what button you press, you can't get out of it.
Oh my god, I actually would quit. I actually think I would. That would piss me off so much.
We decided to do another timeline quest, and Soup noticed that he could launch the mission directly from the quest menu. He said it was very convenient because in the past he was sometimes unsure which thing to select on the director. Overall, I'm a big fan of the timeline missions, but since they essentially summarize the story of an entire campaign, they can be a bit problematic if you actually go to play the campaign later on. For example, a new player will probably play through the timeline because their quest tab told them to, but then it essentially spoils the whole story and discourages them from playing the actual campaign. Based on what the game told us, we also played the timeline in the complete wrong order, which certainly didn't help. After Soup was feeling lost on day 1, I kind of suggested that we focus on Guardian ranks. This was one of the few tips I gave him throughout our experiment, but it seemed that this recommendation was extremely helpful and gave him a lot more focus.
So, just in these past 2 hours, knowing about this Guardian rank, like I just know how to instantly get to this now, right? The journey, and then so just being able to click on this and then instantly see stuff to level up is pretty satisfying. Like, just the fact that I have a check mark when it's completed and I know exactly what I need to do. I have all these ranks that I can look forward to doing. That's pretty fun. That's less confusing than I was the last time I was playing. I do like that. I think you had mentioned to me that you wanted to explore the Guardian thing because you think it would be helpful, which is exactly what it is.
And I think even then it could be more front and center because like I kind of told you like we're going to do the Guardian ranks, you know?
Yes.
Like if I hadn't told you, I'm not sure if you would necessarily do them right away. You might do some other quests. Like I know that you've been looking at some other quests first, so
I would have gone to the quest tab and then just done all this right here, which is all the stuff that's in front of my face.
Next up was this quest to unlock the Risk Runner exotic. When you select the quest, it's in the EDZ, but interestingly, the mission itself actually takes place in the Cosmodrome. I feel like most people don't even notice this, but it definitely has the potential to confuse new players when they are still just learning the different locations in the Destiny universe. This mission explained a bit more about Cade, which was nice, and then we unlocked the Risk Runner itself. This was a fantastic introduction to exotics in Destiny 2 because the very next room of the quest was specifically designed to be a Risk Runner demo. There were tons of enemies using arc damage so that you could activate the perk. I felt this was a perfect example of the game showing you why exotics are powerful and different from other weapons. In my opinion, Destiny needs to show more and tell less, and this was another great example of them actually doing that and demonstrating things in gameplay. I randomly got a red border and interacted with it, but the game told me literally nothing about how important these things actually are. Red borders are used for crafting the most powerful weapons in the entire game, so you think it would at least say something to teach new players. As it turned out, the game did actually give me an explanation, but it just gave it to me like 5 minutes after the fact. Also, I'm sorry, but this explanation was terrible for new players. It used jargon like pattern extraction and deep sight resonance. Like, come on, you might as well delete this notification because no new player is going to learn anything from this confusing mess of a paragraph. It's like me when I try to explain to my grandma that my job is to make videos about video games, but she doesn't know what video games are. To make matters worse, this ridiculous notification literally never disappeared. I played through an entire strike with this thing on my screen, which was quite annoying considering that it covers up the HUD. After I finished the strike, I went up to the tower and guess what? The notification was still there. Every new player is probably just so baffled by this seemingly immortal pop-up that contains completely incoherent information. The quest log was once again overflowed, now having 14 quests and literally no direction on which ones actually matter. In my opinion, some of the quests like a small gift are pointless and the only thing they accomplish is confusing new players. I loaded up some solo Gambit and got a Gambit tip on the Gambit loading screen. This was fantastic, and it actually seems that there is some connection with the tips being related to the activities you're loading into. Unfortunately though, these tips are a poor substitution for an actual tutorial. Naturally, people were not banking their motes, and it would just be so nice for the game to actually explain the basics of Gambit and PvP to new players. Like imagine if you could select a tutorial where you could play a simulated Gambit game and explore the maps while being instructed on how to bank motes. This would probably also be super helpful for the modes and objectives in PvP. One of the next Guardian rank objectives was fantastic. It taught us how to activate the perks on the seasonal artifact. This is incredibly important because these are the most powerful mods in the game and they have a huge impact on gameplay. Unfortunately though, it didn't really explain anything after that. It didn't explain that these mods are always active and don't need to be equipped, and it didn't explain how these mods are super important for countering champions. Come to think of it, the game never mentions champions at all. These are some of the most powerful enemies in the game, and yet, even when you encounter a champion, the game doesn't give you the slightest clue on how to beat them. New players are probably just so lost as to why champions are so powerful and have infinite health regeneration. The next objective was to upgrade some armor, but then the game literally wouldn't let me do it. As it turned out, you have to actually equip mods before you can upgrade your armor, which really makes no sense. You normally need to upgrade your gear in order to get enough energy to slot the mods, so this was super confusing. These Guardian rank steps really need to provide more guidance on some of the more complicated systems in this game. Not only was the objective hard to understand, but the whole entire mod system itself is just so important and detailed that it deserves some further explanation. Unfortunately, in its current state, it basically just tells you, oh, congrats, you've unlocked the extraordinarily complex armor and mod systems. Good luck, hopefully you understand everything now and have fun. On the bright side, the process of acquiring mods has been massively improved compared to the old system that we used to have. In modern times, you just automatically unlock every single mod in the game, but back in the day, new players would have no access to mods. They would have to individually purchase the mods from vendors and painstakingly unlock them over time. I can't even begin to express how huge this improvement is, and I'm very glad that we have this new system. The next Guardian rank objective had us go speak to Saint 14, Shax, and the Drifter to quote, learn about Trials, Crucible, and Gambit. Unfortunately though, these steps were completely useless because they don't actually teach you anything. You just go to the vendor, interact with them, and then the objective is complete. Doing this action does not make a new player learn a single thing about Trials, Crucible, or Gambit. In addition to improving these objectives, Guardian ranks should really have more of a focus on the core modes of this game, considering how important they are. As a PvP player, I was a little dismayed to discover that there are 0 PvP-related objectives, even in the higher levels of Guardian ranks. By doing the Guardian ranks, Soup didn't learn a single thing about dungeons, raids, or any of the core modes, and therefore he was simply unaware of the existence of the best content this game has to offer. At one point, we were sitting in orbit, and he just asked me what all these core activities were doing on his screen. Also, side note on this, why are we telling brand new players to check out Trials? I don't know, that does not sound like the best idea. Upon loading into the first mission of the Witch Queen campaign, the game decided that for some reason, this is a good time to introduce us to the definition of an energy weapon. At this point, I was just bewildered. We had been playing the game for like 10 hours at this point, and it just now thinks that we need to know what an energy weapon is. Energy weapons deal bonus damage against enemies with shields, which is quite an important thing to know. So far, we've fought intense battles against hundreds of shielded enemies, so it would have been really nice to learn the functionality of energy weapons quite a while ago. There was a brief quest to unlock transmog, and then the game provided an excellent tutorial on how to use it and unlock ornaments. I still think that the transmog system is unnecessarily complicated overall, but at least it was explained in a way that new players could understand. Honestly, I was surprised that the transmog had such an in-depth tutorial, but the far more important systems like Infusion had literally no tutorial whatsoever. Before we could move on to endgame content, Soup and I were both required to verify our accounts with our phones. We went over to Bungie's website, put in our information, and then we encountered an error. We were both unable to verify our accounts due to some glitch on Bungie's website. The sheer number of game-breaking glitches we had encountered in our gameplay so far was disturbing, and I'm sure that this didn't make a great first impression on Soup. After all, nobody wants to get into a game where you get scammed by vendors, get stuck interacting with vendors, and get stuck trying to verify your account. After a bit of time spent troubleshooting and Googling, we found a forum post saying that we just had to sit there on the verification screen and wait for a while, and then type in the code once again. Shockingly, this actually worked, but we still thought this was quite a problematic glitch because most people probably wouldn't be patient enough to figure this out. Now that I was verified, I decided to do a solo investigation of the in-game LFG called Fireteam Finder and see if I could use it to group up with some other players. My account is still brand new and my stuff is pretty low level, so I was really curious to see how others would treat me. I decided that the Prophecy Dungeon was an appropriate level of difficulty given the state of my account. I agreed to this Guardian Oath, which basically just said to be nice to people, and then started applying for groups for the dungeon. This first one just ignored me and never replied, but on my second attempt, this kind fellow by the name of Latina Lover 35 invited me to join. We quickly readied up and then proceeded into the prophecy. Both of the players in my fire team seemed rather nice, and although we weren't on voice chat, they still communicated through the text chat and also by shooting at the moats. Being the legend that he is, Latina Lover 35 flew across the entire Rainbow Road part of the dungeon and then offered to show me the secret chest, which I thought was super considerate of him. We managed to one-phase the boss, and I actually did some okay damage considering that my account is so trash, and then we emoted and parted ways. I was originally super apprehensive about the Fireteam Finder, and I thought that people might just kick my low-level account, but I actually had an extremely positive experience overall. The interface was easy to navigate, the dungeon went really smooth, and the people I matched with were super cool. If you don't have friends to play with, I would highly recommend trying out the Fireteam Finder to get into some of Destiny's group-based content. It really is some of the best stuff in the game, and I'm glad that the Fireteam Finder now exists to make it more accessible to casual and new players. When I looted the last chest in the dungeon, it gave me chest armor, the final piece that I needed to reach the soft cap. This was perfect since it was my final Guardian rank objective, so I headed over to the tower and ranked up to the maximum free rank of level 6. It actually gave me a nice little pop-up encouraging me to use Fireteam Finder, which was excellent, and I think this is the perfect time to tell players about the feature. I asked Soup what he thought about everything and asked him to share what he was still confused about.
In terms of things I'm still confused about, definitely the story. Because there's just a lot of things thrown my way with character names and people involved in, the world of Destiny. So I feel like I would still need to pay quite a bit longer and probably need to watch videos and look up lore online to fully understand things like the Witness, the Veil, right? All that stuff. I feel like there's just a lot of terms thrown my way. A big point of contention is just that maybe the disjointed, where am I? What should I do next? Why am I doing this quest at this time? Why am I doing this story at this time? I just did a timeline thing in the past and now I'm doing something in the future, right? With the Witness and all this stuff. Time hopping all over the place, definitely, I think, very confusing. And made me want to learn more, but it definitely a lot of terms being thrown at once to the point where I almost felt bad when it's like, hey, so do you know what the light is? Or do you know what, who Savathun is? Or all these people? I was like, not really, I'm sorry, right?
On the opposite side of the spectrum, what is something that you think was explained really well and you got a good understanding of it right away?
Oh, good question. Explained really well. So, is it bad that I'm having trouble thinking of something that was explained really well? I think what was explained well was, so my super abilities. I think whenever those were, I realized I could do them, and then it told me how to do them. I picked those up pretty quickly, especially when I did a quest where I all of a sudden had the upgraded super abilities, right? When they were green that one time, or when they were purple that one time, the Void and the Arc. I understood that pretty easily, and I picked up really quickly on what keys I needed to press to use those and how to use them. I think that was explained pretty flawlessly. What I find really fun about this game is the gunplay. I just love shooting, and I think it's really snappy and reactive, and enemies are hit by your bullets, which is very important in a game like this, obviously. So when my supers work and when my guns work, then yeah, it makes me want to continue playing. So I think that was explained really well.
Another insight I had throughout this process was that some things were technically explained, but they were only explained once and in a confusing way. This led Soup to the conclusion that they were never explained. For example, he still has never used his finisher. I'm pretty sure that most new players find themselves in a similar situation. Stuff like this even leads to those Reddit posts I see every day with titles like, "As a new player, this game does everything it can to make you quit." Something else that was really impactful for Soup was the absence of content that was removed from the game. I told him about the old content and the campaigns and the seasons that were cut. The Red War wasn't perfect, but that story was infinitely more compelling than chasing down some random hive wizard for 3 hours with Shaw. It was obvious to him that the game couldn't convey an understandable and complete narrative with all of these previous stories missing.
There was multiple instances when we were playing where I could feel like I could hear the pain in your voice, where it's like, man, there used to be so much more to this, but it's no longer in the game and you can't experience it. And I was just like, damn, that sucks, man. It seems like this story or this part of the world would be really cool, but it's officially gone and I can't even experience it anymore. So, and that leads to, like I said, the potential confusion in the storylines and timelines with a lot of different quests in the game, a lot of hopping around, to the point where you almost maybe become a little bit too confused where you don't even pay attention anymore because you're just like, I don't even know what this means. Yeah, which is sad.
That one hit really hard. Parts of the story were so confusing that it made him not even want to pay attention anymore. It really can't be overstated how big of an issue this is, but unfortunately it's still an issue that is happening today. With all of the seasons officially being removed from the game, there are gaping holes in the story that will never be addressed. For example, Soup told me he had no clue what the Veil was. This was explained in seasonal content, but that seasonal content is of course getting removed just like every other season, so he will never get the opportunity to understand the Veil. Some of Destiny's very best moments are lost in time, and if you miss them, well, then it just sucks to be you, unfortunately. There is a growing number of moments that can be described with the phrase, "You just had to be there, bro." This type of thing is precisely what leads to people making comments like, "Destiny 2 is the most unfriendly, impenetrable game I have ever encountered." Over the last 10 years, the game has been stacking up so many mechanics and systems that make total sense if you're a longtime player, but since they are not explained, they are just overwhelming for newcomers. For us veterans, learning a few new things per year feels like no problem, but if you have to learn everything all at once, it's just so hard to absorb. As this guy put it, "I was punished for not playing Destiny since day one." Another guy said, "It feels like the campaign is designed around the assumption that the player has played every single expansion pack to date." I wanted to get Soup's take on all this, so here's what I asked him. A lot of people say that the new player experience is confusing, it's horrible, it's bad, it's unfriendly for new players. Now that you've experienced it, would you say that all of those things are true, or did you have a different experience?
It's a hard question because I feel like so much is thrown at you for this. And there is a lot. I'm not gonna say it was a horrible time. Like if I had hopped onto this game with a couple friends and we had found stuff out together, then I don't think it would have been that bad of a time. I would say it's like a 50-50 experience of overwhelming, like a lot. It's overwhelming. I think that's a good word to explain it. I think overwhelming is a good way to put it. If you're willing to push past a lot of the overwhelmingness, then a lot of it makes more sense over time.
I think this is one of my favorite games of all time, definitely my favorite game of the past several years, and
yeah,
I think it's hard to get into, but once you get into it, it's really, really good. So
yeah,
there are some good things and some bad things about the new player experience. It has definitely improved over the past few years. And in its current form, I'd say it's solid, not awful, not good either. So
yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. Like a lot of the stuff you had to tell me a couple times, or I had to realize myself what I had to do a couple times. But after that, then I figured it out. I know exactly where to go. It seems like a lot of the time that when I was looking at something, or even you looked at something, it was like, oh, they added this, and I didn't know they added this, but this is actually really nice, which is, I feel like, a step in the right direction. It seems like they're adding stuff, which is good for new players, but it's just not explained properly half the time, so you're never going to discover it until later on. And at that point, it's either A, too late for you to really appreciate it as a new player, or B, somebody's quit by that time already, so they're never going to, appreciate that. So yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. Is it seems like, based on what you've said and how I've experienced it, they're doing things better. It's just not fully done yet.
He's totally right. The work is not done yet. Bungie needs to continue their efforts of improving the new player experience and making the game more welcoming and approachable for new players. We need tutorials, better explanations, more of a focus on Guardian ranks, and generally a cohesive story that actually makes new players feel engaged and motivated instead of lost and confused. Destiny is bleeding players faster than ever before, and if this game is going to survive, it needs to pull in the next generation of Guardians. A game can only survive on a dwindling audience of superfans for a certain amount of time. We know that Destiny keeps people playing longer than any other game, but it really struggles to get them in the door. What we've shown in this video is precisely why. Overall, I thought it was fascinating to view the game through the eyes of a new player, and I'm immensely grateful to Soup for putting up with my insane experiment. He never gave up on the confusing parts, and it was so cool to see him improve over time. By the end of our play session, he was finally comfortable in the menus, his aim went from being inconsistent to actually quite excellent, and he started to understand the bits of story that were available to us as free-to-play players. He was no longer getting lost on basic objectives like this one from day one. We had a great time, and at the end, I asked him one final question. So the ultimate question is, based on everything you've seen so far, will you ever play this game again, just on your own volition for no reason?
I enjoyed the game, and I would 100% hop on again, especially now that I understand something like the Guardian system more. I think I would absolutely hop on again when I have time and continue playing. Like I said, I'm a sucker for good cinematics, good lore, good gunplay. So those to me appeal to me, and that this game checked off all those boxes. So yeah, I would say ending on a good note, I definitely would play again.
Okay, cool. I'm going to send you this. If you ever decide to play again, you now own all of the expansions.
Oh, dude, that's really nice of you, man. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I had a great experience.